Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm your host, Don Irvine, and my co-host out there in Virginia, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. Seems to be looking more like that every day these days.
Yep.
All
But
right.
really dog-faced when you go to the old gas station. Oh,
Yeah,
please.
we'll be talking a lot about that.
Click thing. Please click.
All right. It's a little hot out there today,
A
but
little warm today.
I need to ask you this question though, just because I don't know. I was thinking about this yesterday, just on the weather, because I always ask you for kind of the golf report and everything like that. But has it been wetter this year, I mean, in the last few months than it normally has to you? Do you think?
Yeah. I think it. I think it's above now. I think it's about 6 inches above where it's supposed to be per year right now. At Dulles, which is the nearest one to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the golf course will not. It dries up, but it stays soft. So I can't like get the ball to bounce wherever it hits.
That's it.
I needed a little more.
I was counting on a little more. What's going on? Yeah. So you've been to my house and you know my yard and everything like this. It's just that it's hard to find like 2 or 3 days in a row where it stays dry.
Yeah,
It's like every couple of days it like rains, and I'm cutting my grass every 7 to 9 days, but I've got to find the window when it's actually dry enough to do so, because the yard in the back is like a sponge. And so, what might look dry in the front is not necessarily completely dry in the back. And, I mean, it's
right.
going to be hot. It's a hot day today, but I think it's going to rain tomorrow. And I'm thinking, like, got a lot of people coming over the house on Saturday. Maybe Friday I'll do something, but I am not real keen on being out in 90-degree weather and cutting my grass with the humidity. So I'm a little bit like, which basically, generally, I will say, so far this year, from my grass cutting experience, is that I've been able to manage to cut the grass when it's been relatively cool. We've had some few cool days, and I've tried to take advantage there, but it's just not enough dry days in between to kind of set a regular schedule for me. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah. It's it's very frustrating. Like I went for about I think 19 days that every time I didn't have a lot of chances to golf, but every time I did have a chance, the rain messed it up. So I mean, I went almost 3 weeks without touching it. That's a long time for me this time of year. I mean, it's
Yeah,
one thing to go 3 weeks in February, right?
right.
But 3 weeks in May and June is highly unusual.
Yep, and we are all shorn now of our locks.
We are. Look at that. Look at
That's right. That's right. That's right. I got mine today this morning. My wife goes, "It's time now. It's now or never." And we were going to do. I think we were
it
going to
gets
do.
too much and they can't cut it. We just gotta let it
Yeah,
grow.
yeah. I mean, we have a friend of ours that comes over once in a while and cuts my wife's hair, and sometimes if she's got time, she'll cut mine. But I had gone 2 months without getting my hair cut, and I mean, just like when I know it starts getting over the ear, I'm like, it's time to go. I got to do it.
The other thing is like in the last year or so, maybe in 2 years, like usually like before that, like me and my kids go get a haircut together, right? So it's about the same time that we need to go back, right? We were long, we got short, and then we got long again. About the same, we started from the same point, so it should be the same, right? But now it's like I'm getting old, so it doesn't grow back as fast. So it was a lot longer for them, and they were both really needing it by the time we went. So
Yeah, and your daughter likes to keep her hair short too.
yes, very short, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like, hey, Dad, come on, come on.
Yeah. They were both like, nah, nah.
All right. So now you're going to answer one more question before we move on to the news for me, which is generally what is the price of a haircut these days? Because I don't go to a barber shop. I just have either my wife or this other friend cuts it and we pay her. Well,
$15.
15 bucks. Okay. I mean, I grew up going to a barber shop like every Saturday with my dad or whatever.
Yeah,
It's the old style. But then barber shops seem to kind of have made way for the hair cutteries of the world. But I've noticed lately, at least where I live, that more barbershops have popped back
Yeah,
up.
this place we go is a barbershop. It is
Yeah,
an old school setup. It's an old school setup. It's
yeah,
but it's a barbershop. I mean, there's
yeah.
the
I mean, I don't
chair, the
know.
line of chairs on the wall, and the magazines, the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I mean, I'm old enough, we're old enough that we kind of do this, the whole barbershop pole and the whole 9 yards. So
Yeah,
it's a little bit of history in there for everybody too.
I
So
think
that's
we've
good.
decided that really is the best way to deliver that service too. That
Yeah.
really is the atmosphere you're looking for.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. All right. Ukraine. Okay. So we're up to day 112. I think we talked about, I mean, it's looking better for Russia now. I mean, they seem to be a little more entrenched and they seem to have got some of their footing on some of these things. And Zelensky is spending a lot of time pleading for more weaponry and more, modern armaments and things like that. But they seem to be grinding this thing out, and they seem to have the upper hand at this point in time. But once again, still the Ukrainians, their resiliency is amazing. Because we figure what 3 days was probably Putin's plan. So he's already plus 109 or minus 109, however way you want to look at it. For him is like this is going to be a longer slog than he anticipated. But I don't know. I mean, do you see if you see something is this going to continue on for months, or is this something that he's going to get better control here in the next, say, 30 days?
Well, I guess the G7 people are getting together at the end of the month in Madrid to talk about whether to help him more. So I think if he can make it the next 2 weeks, things start to get brighter for him. Because it does look like they'll help him to the extent they can. But also, there's some indication out there that the Russians are running out of stuff, like their guided missiles, which sounds like a good thing for the Ukrainians. But what the Russians are doing is pulling out old missiles from the Soviet era that are not guided. So, they're just going to chunk it at you, and whatever it hits, right? So there's no sparing, civilian areas and whatnot because they don't know where it's going to hit. So, there you have that going on. There's some indications that the Ukrainians can hang on for a while. They can really start to deplete some key capabilities of the Russians. Now, but it's hanging on for a while, right? Because the Russians have decided that, they do have some momentum right now. You're right about that, and that this is the time to press it to the end.
That's an interesting comment you made there too, because I hadn't really thought about the whole guided versus unguided missile thing. I mean, that's a huge change, in the way of modern warfare from the old days of where you'd fire these things and you'd kind of like, I'm aiming this way, but we don't really know what we're hitting because we can't pinpoint it, right? So
we know how far it is, but we don't know what it'll be.
Right. So they, though for Putin, it didn't seem to matter. Even with the guided missiles, civilian targets were still game for him based on.
Well, the Russians, the way they fight is they do civilian targeting. They want the civilian society, civil society to break down. They want the people of the country to say we've suffered enough. Give them whatever they want.
Right. Yeah.
So they want atrocities. They direct their army that when you conquer something, rape, pillage, and plunder, make it hurt.
Yeah, I still, I still don't quite figure out, in the end. I mean, so if Putin gains control of, fully in control of the eastern half of Ukraine, or he takes control of all of Ukraine or whatever, I mean, so he's got this country, but what does he gain reputationally? I mean, he's the West is against him, and then he's had he's chased some countries that have been very much not aligned to go say, well, we're joining NATO. I mean,
right. That's what I'm saying. That whatever reputational gains he could have had, he seems to be punting because who would he influence with these reputational gains? Hey, I'm a tough guy and I'll wipe you out if you mess with me. Finland, which has walked away, Sweden, which has walked away, Poland, which is trying to rearm to be ready in case they decide they needed to expand a little more, right? So people don't realize, and I see people on our side who've said some pretty unwise things about all this. Oh, don't help the Poles. It's their fault for giving away all their stuff. It's like, where do you want to fight this battle? Do you want to fight it, on the U.S. East Coast, right? I mean, because if they attack Russia, I mean, if they attack Poland, the Russians attack the Poles, that's them we're in, right? Article 8 of, we're right there. We're fully committed. There's no getting out of it because of NATO. So, the time to stop them is before they decide to try their luck with Poland.
Yeah, and then Putin gets mad at like Finland, and it's like, but you just invaded
You're threatening everybody in the region. You don't want them to go run and find protection. Then don't threaten them.
Yeah, don't.
They didn't do that when you were sitting over there, leaving Ukraine alone. Finland wasn't worried about NATO. They weren't thinking about that, right? That's something you did that caused that.
Right. Yeah. No, you triggered them to do that. They were just fine, until you did that, and then all of a sudden they're thinking like, well, we could be next. I mean, it's like, we've got what 800 something miles.
800 mile border.
Yeah. So it's like, hello, and there's I mean, Putin says he wouldn't do it, but I mean, it's like, who in the heck trusts Putin, to say
there's a lot of stuff.
So speaking of reputational, the type of thing like this is like Biden, reputationally. I mean, I'm thinking about Saudi Arabia too, in particular, in terms of just staying on the foreign affairs side. I mean, it seems like he started off, when he came into office, really just, the Saudis, bad, the whole Khashoggi thing and all these kinds of things like this, all of this stuff. He goes to Iran. I want to revive the Iran deal and do that. But then now he's got a gas price problem, an oil problem. Now he's like, well, I'm going to take a trip to Saudi Arabia. It seems, I think the left, part of his party there is kind of like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? It's like, are you flip flopping? What, is what's going on here with Biden?
Well, I mean, what do we actually know about Joe Biden? He looks out for himself and he doesn't really care about anybody else. So, he's to the point now where he's convinced that he can't be president. He can't really exercise any power. Can't be president in win the next election or exercise any power when he's in here now, without the support of people who buy gas, and that's virtually everybody. So, what does Bob say here? This is on the Donbass as opposed to.
It's true.
Right, that's right. He could well settle for the East and let it go, and But the thing about it is, Ukrainians are never going to let it go. Right? It's either subdue the whole thing, bomb it to smithereens, or you'll never be rid of them. You'll never be able to sit without your back to the wall in a restaurant again in that whole part of the world, right? Because the one thing all the Ukrainians agree on is they hate the Russians now, and they are not. They owe them nothing. If they get a chance to kill them, they will kill them.
Yeah, and they're rebuilding in the midst of all this.
Yeah.
On top of that,
right.
But I'm sorry. So anyway, go back to your Saudi point here with Biden.
So Biden, he's realized that like the gas prices caused the inflation, right? And that he caused the gas prices to go up on purpose by design as part of keeping a campaign promise. So, he can say he was elected to do this because he was elected and he promised it. He wasn't shy about it. So he has raised all these prices. It's been a disaster for him politically. It's been a disaster for the country economically. And he's now like, let's see if I can talk somebody into giving us enough oil so it's being produced elsewhere and not here, so we still stay on track for our green dream or whatever. But yet we have enough oil to have stable prices. I mean, that's not what the Greens asked for. That's not what the AOCs of the world asked for, right? I mean, what they're wanting is don't use fossil fuels. Right. And it turns out that we can't make it without using fossil fuels.
Yeah. I mean, he came in. I mean, he's on the record of being anti-fossil fuels. That fossil fuels need to go away entirely in this country.
We're going to take it out. No more ability to produce. That's what he said. Offshore, everything. And again, I think we talked about this last week. At the end of this month, right, the plan that authorizes people to drill offshore of the United States will expire. The new plan, work on the new plan also begins at the end of this month, which means there won't be a plan on July 1st or going forward for a considerable period of time. And my view is probably for the rest of the Biden administration, because they don't care about having a plan. They don't want offshore drilling. So when I first started saying this, I kept looking for somebody to say, you idiot, you don't know how the Interior Department works or offshore drilling plans work or whatever. And I'd be like happy to learn, right? But that's not happening. Instead, what's happening is oil patch people are saying, yes, you're right. We're being told to shut things down. We're already starting to reduce production with $5 gas to accommodate the closures we know that the Biden Interior Department is about to impose on us.
Yeah, and there's just not enough incentive for these oil companies to go out and start this all out production type of a thing like that, because they know the administration could just penalize them in all kinds of ways for different things. They can change their mind at the drop of the hat. So it's they're being very cautious in terms of their approach to things. Where our refining capacity is limited. We've added. They're regulated to a certain extent out of existence. I mean, we've added. The government has added so many regulations to so many things environmentally that it's hard to actually get these things off the ground and keep them running and all. There's just so many different facets of this. But Biden, I mean, the administration is like, okay, this is a Putin problem, and this is an oil company greed problem.
Right. Well, that's their thing, is it's somebody else's fault. But you got a lot of explaining to do if you're going to tell me it's somebody else's fault. Because for one thing, the oil companies somehow were not greedy before January 20th, 2021, right? They had no greed before that. And then as greedy as they are now, they're all at $5 a gallon, right? What if you were really greedy, if you were exceptionally greedy, you say, okay, I'm going to go $4.50 a gallon, which is still a ton of money. But, I'm going to buy all the business, right? Everybody will come to me because I'm 50 cents cheaper a gallon than everybody else, right? Wouldn't you? You'd go somewhere if it was 50 cents cheaper, wouldn't you? Pretty good distance, probably 15, 20 miles to get that cheap gas, right? So, right? I mean, that's, the way it is. So, why did that happen? Why did that all happen on day one of the Biden presidency? There was no guilt before, right? There was no greed before. It's like you can't explain that. That's not a viable explanation for the phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the war in Ukraine, created a situation which pushed prices up higher, but they were already going in that direction beforehand. And so, this finger pointing by Biden, like this is Putin's fault, ignores where we were before the war started, and we were already in a spot where the prices had already skyrocketed anyway. So it's and oil companies, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's always with the Democrats, these liberals. Every time these industries get into a profit mode, they're greedy. They need the windfall profits tax and things like that. When the airlines were making money, it's like, oh no, deregulation was bad. Look at all the money they're making. But these businesses are very cyclical in nature, in that there are good years and there are going to be bad years. Or Exxon Mobil, until this last boom, they have actually been in terrible shape financially. They have barely been able to cover their stockholder dividend. They used to be a cash flow cow, and the last few years, because of bad decisions they made, partially too. They bought into things that they probably shouldn't have bought into. We had the pandemic, things deflated for them. Now they're able to actually get back on their feet again. But the Democrats always look at what happened here in the last couple of months or whatever when it comes to these profits. They see the headline numbers, but they don't understand the business at all. And then and Biden's finger pointing. I mean, how much longer can the American people stand by and just watch Joe Biden continue to point the finger and blame Putin and other factors. I mean, he's blaming the Republicans too, right? For
Where's your budget plan? Like, we're not in power. You have both houses of Congress and the White House. We're not the ones who come up with the plans, right? If you can fix it, fix it. You got something that'll fix it, we'll vote for it, right? We want it fixed too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in office for what, almost a year and a half. Is that what it is now?
950 days left.
Yeah, and so
I'm counting.
Maybe we need a clock.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Bob's got another comment here.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what's going on, is that they decided that we're going to make our stand on fossil fuels right here and now. And we are about 1/40th or 1/45th, to be fair, 1/45th of the way to having the capacity to do it without fossil fuels. We're about 1/45th of the way. They're about 3% or so, 2.5%, 3% of the way.
Yeah, and
that's it. That's all we got. So, if you think we can run the country on, 2 or 3% of the energy we have now, then by all means, Joe Biden is on the right track. Yeah, and energy demand, ramping up because, right, devices and electric cars and all the other stuff that you want to put on the electricity grid, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just kind of devoid of reality and things like this. I mean, energy prices go up, and it's gas, it's natural gas, it's everything has been going up. Demand is up. Americans have continued to spend so far.
Right.
I mean,
you said natural gas reminded me something we were talking about earlier. The regulations that you were talking about that they're piling on the energy industry are not designed to reduce pollution, further the public goals that most of us would share about energy exploration, right? They are designed to make it so the energy companies cannot meet the requirements, right? Like the pipeline rules, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is trying to make pipeline rules so restrictive that you essentially cannot operate pipelines in the U.S. Okay, gas pipelines. So the only way natural gas moves is through pipelines, right? We don't put that on trucks.
Right.
All right. So no pipeline, and most of New England is relying on natural gas. So it's either figure this out by November, right? Or you're going to have some cold people in New England.
Yeah,
right?
no,
they don't seem to care.
That's true. I mean, that's true. I mean, the regulations are, they always talk about, we want cleaner air or cleaner water and all these kinds of things, and that's why we need all of this. We want to reduce pollution, but really, in the end, I mean, these rules, these regulations are so onerous. You force the operators to either to more or less shut down and say, I can't afford to do this. I mean, the costs of this are just, and I mean, look what's happened to the nuclear, industry, power industry. I mean, we went from a country that had lots of nuclear power plants, very cheap, very clean, a source of energy, to we have very few. I mean, they continue to shut them down, and yet over time, they've developed much safer plants, much safer technology on this, and here we are wanting for something that we can't have anymore because they put so many onerous regulations and the cost is so high that it's just ridiculous all the time, while at the same time piling on numerous tax credits for green energy. I mean, you and I have been paying for green energy from the get-go. I mean, you get a tax break for buying an EV or a hybrid. You get a tax break for for putting solar panels on your house and things like this. All of the things that basically we've paid for that actually birthed those industries and kept them in business. Without those tax incentives and those tax breaks, those businesses cannot stand on their own.
Right.
They cannot stand on
one
their
year
own.
they let the wind production tax credit expire. Right. They didn't come through at the end at Christmas night and voted in. Right. And it died. And private investment in wind energy went down 92% that year. So in other words, There's no private money in it unless it's popped up by all this government money. So, these people say, well, let's quit subsidizing oil and gas. And I'm like, you know what? Let's quit subsidizing any industry. Yeah, at first it will grow up, and then the efficient producers will crowd out the inefficient producers, and we'll actually get what we need. Oh, no, oh, no. Yeah, I didn't think so.
So I didn't realize this, but I should have. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me, which is California. I stumbled across something the other day about just kind of what California requires. They pile on all kinds of crazy laws and regulations, right? We know that California, it's about as left wing as you're going to get out there. But if you want to build like a new apartment building, I mean, you have to have solar panels, and apparently you're supposed to set aside like 20% of your parking space for chargers. Okay, and it's like, who can afford to do this? I mean, there is a possibility with tax incentives that an apartment owner will possibly recoup that expense of the solar panels at some point in time, right? But this charging thing just seems to be such folly until you've got like a plethora of, say, $20,000 EVs that are reliable, and exactly how, what are you charging the people, to charge up their EVs? Is the apartment owner in charge of maintaining the EV? I mean, I could see those chargers getting vandalized in an apartment complex. I mean, all kinds of things run through my mind. It's like the Democrats, the liberals,
electrocuted.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I know. I mean, there's not a ton of juice running through those things, unless it's I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's just talking about his Tesla. I have to give Elon Musk credit for the way he developed his whole plan. Is that, if you've got a Tesla, the Tesla tells you where the superchargers are, right? And you have an adapter that can plug into any charger around, but if you don't have a Tesla, you can't go to a Tesla supercharger because it's a proprietary charger, and that plug, your EV plug, will not work on a Tesla supercharger. So he kind of limits that, which is a good thing for him probably. And it's well laid out. He planned, he's got a bunch of them in any one place versus like one here and one there. It takes a long time. It takes a reasonable long time to charge a car. So it's like, okay, how many people are, in an apartment complex are going to be able to afford an EV? Are they going to actually want to leave their car plugged into something? Isn't that a risk there?
2 hours to get to 80% power.
Yeah, I mean,
then it's a lot of hours to get the last 20%.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Most people just stop at 80.
Yeah, and do most apartment dwellers, do they want to pay for the electricity? Do they see that as a savings over, so many things that the administrations, that the lefties haven't thought out and figured out exactly how they're going to, quote, electrify America, with all of this. And then we've talked about before, just what happens to our power grid, because California's already started their blackout periods and stuff like that, right? It's crazy. I mean, I had that friend of mine in Tucson who, what was it, 10 or 15 minutes last week or the week before, the power went out in a certain part of Tucson and everybody was stuck.
Not
much you can do about that. So yes, Joe Biden. But here we have, today's a big day. Today, and everybody's watching the Federal Reserve, trying to figure out, are they going to go for 50 basis points? Or going to go for 75 basis points? They go for a 75 basis points or a 0.75% increase. That'll be the biggest increase they've had since 1998
or 94.
That'll show 94. That's right, 94. Yeah. So that'll show that they're really trying to tame inflation on the one hand, but that also puts them in that position where they could start tipping the economy into more recessionary mode as a result of that. The problem, part of this
freeze everybody in place on where they live too, right? You can't you can't fix where they live. You can't move.
Yeah.
Right. You can't buy a house. And you get an 8% mortgage.
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. I mean, that's just a nightmare for people as the mortgage rates have just jumped up. Yeah. This goes up another 0.75%. Yeah. You're gonna see that 6-7%, and the Fed's not done. The Fed is probably not likely done with raising interest rates. Part of the problem, though, is that Biden doesn't seem to understand that how much, or doesn't want to admit, either way, he's probably, that, the spending that the administration had done prior, with pumping all that money in through, all the stimulus spending and things like that, you know, puts all this money into the economy, uh, is not, you can't have all that spending and then still raise the interest rates and not find out something else is going to go wrong. And he still thinks that, oh, I know, I still need Build Back Better, I still need more of these kinds of things, we still got to do all these things. It's the wrong prescription, because he doesn't understand economics and how this would all work. And he thinks that just because we have a low unemployment rate, everything is bright and cheery, except, though he did admit that, it's going to take a little while to fix it. There's no way he's going to figure this out by November.
Right. And, it's kind of baked in now. It would take a pretty stunning series of events to make him viable as a candidate in 2024. Although, they claim that that's what they're going to do, is run again. So that'll be interesting to see. So the Larry Sabato's of the world, the people who track electoral politics at the micro level, they say that your opinion economically of the incumbent is locked in June. So by the end of June, if he doesn't have things clearly headed in the right direction, then people will vote in November with the snapshot they have in their head at the end of June. So that's a thing that really frightens the Democrats. Their internals are horrible right now, and getting worse, is what the insiders say. Their candidate in Pennsylvania is, basically unable to run, Fetterman, because he's sick. They have the Democrats are saying they don't, they're questioning whether Biden should think about, pursuing a second term. I think the way the political realities are, you kind of have to say you are, even if you're not, for a while, right, to be politically viable. But I think they understand that their entire experiment is in serious danger.
Yeah, I mean, there's Biden cannot tell you right now that he's not going to run in 2024. I mean, that he has to stay the course with that, as bad as things are. But I think you're right. I mean, I think that, that the whole idea, perception is reality with the voters in many cases, and that if their perception, over the summer, coming up here, that it's bad, inflation is bad, other things are just not going the way, Democrats don't have any idea of how to resolve the issues that are at hand, which is economic issues, the pocketbook issues that matter to voters most. Come November, they're going to put a big hurt on the Democrats overall. And even if inflation cools, which, I think the Fed's moves will have an impact. By November, I think we'll see some cooling. But it's not going to go from 8%, the official 8% number, to 4%. That isn't going to happen. It might. You might
quit going up, right? You might be still in 7 or 8, but you won't.
Right. You could still be there. It's really, this economy, the inflation has defied, predictions by all the, the quote experts, right? And so they really don't know. There's just so many different factors that go in there. But when I don't know about you, when I see that 8% number, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, like, as far as I'm concerned, so part of the reason for this is they refuse to acknowledge where the inflation's coming from. You hear all this stuff about tightening the money supply, and certainly, some quantitative tightening has to happen, right? And that is part of the equation. But when you're basically at about 235 or 40% of the price of gasoline when Biden took office, right? So transportation cost goes through every product you buy. Everything has to be transported, right? So there's no ducking transportation. Yeah, that's right. It's more spending on the
that's exactly right. I mean, that is Biden's answer, right? It's like, okay, he doesn't really want to talk about inflation per se. He says, the rich have got to pay their fair share, so we've got to make them pay more.
In other words, you got nothing new. You got the same old garbage you've been throwing out forever.
Yeah. So
I
yeah, so
mean, the bright side is like all their policy proposals, right? Their way of handling the border, their way of handling police, their way of handling defense, their way of handling diplomacy, foreign policy, their way of handling domestic issues, education, right? The social issues that we talk about, their way of handling the border, their way of handling the economy, their way of handling energy policy, right? All of these things, they have gotten a full run of what they like to do, put into place, and it has all failed magnificently. So, if you can get voters to vote on policy, Republicans should win now, 24, and for the foreseeable future, because the things that the Democrats stake as their most important stuff have been abysmal, catastrophic failures.
right, yeah. So anyway, but I just want to get your thoughts on we had some primaries. Some, I mean, Maine, not a lot going on. We don't really, but
A
we
little bit
had
of news out there.
a little bit of news. But the South Carolina was probably the bigger news. In Texas, we had some news. In Nevada, we had some news. Tom Rice, incumbent Republican in South Carolina House of Representatives, lost his reelection bid in the primary. Lost the primary. Nancy Mace, who Trump went after. Rice. The big thing really is Rice voted for impeachment. Mace, she did not. In the end, Mace survived.
Mace said some stuff about Jan 6. She's like, that was an ugly day in American history or something along those lines, which made Trump mad.
Yeah.
He didn't go after her with the fervor he did Rice, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to see what Trump going after someone looks like, it's Rice. And they lost, 53-25 or something. Mace, after she said this and after she got Trump mad at her, she realized her mistake and went back and, has been Trumpian in how she voted and support for what people identify as Trump policies. So
yeah, I think she even had her picture taken in front of a Trump hotel, and she decided she better throw herself into Trump a little bit more, otherwise, she could be a victim too. So she saved herself.
Right, and that's what she did. I guess Adam Laxalt won in Nevada. He was the Trump endorsed candidate there. Down in South Texas, down on the Mexican border, a lady won a race there. A Republican won a race there that I think Democrats have held that seat for 90-something years. The district got rearranged redistricted a little bit with the monthly, the census and whatever. And so she'll have a different opponent in November, a guy who's already in Congress. But, she won by like 14 points. So, to turn a plus 13 D district and win by 14 points is pretty remarkable. It kind of tells you where people are coming from on this.
Yeah, so Bob
Ira Flores, that's her name. What did it say? Oh, it went away quick.
Sorry. Sometimes I hit that too fast. There we go.
Yeah, okay. So, right. So she what that tells you is, I think Hispanics now, it's about 60% of them are support the right over the left. I won't say they're Republicans. That's not really the accurate way to say it, but that's now a Republican constituency, and black people are trending that way.
What is this? She's the first Mexican born, to
which is kind of surprising too.
Yeah, that was surprising. Yeah, that was surprising. Now, her district, the district that she ran in, so she's going to hold the seat until January. At least fill out the term of the Democrat who left office. That's a D +5. It goes to D +17
in the new district. The old district was D +13.
Yeah.
Right.
So it'll be a tougher fight. The Democrats didn't put up much of a fight in this one. I think their focus really was on November and not really on just the short-term thing. But, I think as the Democrats, with that razor thin margin that they have, you've got to fight for all anyway. You've got a Democrat seat, you've got to hold it, because the top line, the publicity, of they lost this seat that they've held forever and ever and ever is not a good look for them. Even if they take it back, they still had a short-term loss in there, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look that Pelosi and company really exuded, had any any leadership whatsoever, on this issue whatsoever. And Florida, if she's gonna be a name, and that will attract people. As the swing has been one of the things about the Democrats is that they're losing that Latina vote, right? The Latino vote has been swinging more to the Republicans, and this is definitely making them a little more apoplectic and very worried about their future prospects, not just in 2022, but in 2024.
Nobody in America would rather have Biden endorsing them than Trump, right?
Yeah.
Not even the leftists. Tony Gonzalez, who's your student, Bob's student.
Yeah, right. which we like to proudly mention.
Yeah. We know someone who knows someone.
That's right. We should get Bob to get him on the program. We can be the third guy. We can go over some things, right? Bob, reach out. All right. So that, it's been interesting. And I threw in the Laxalt thing, not because it was a big surprise that he would win. I mean, he was running against this war veteran who was a kind of interesting guy. But Laxalt, I mean, he's the son of Pete Domenici, right, the former senator, and then he's the grandson of Paul Laxalt. So he's got this tremendous political bloodline there, and I think they're he's got a decent shot because he's got name recognition immediately from his family name.
Right.
That does him a lot of good. That the Senate race in Nevada, I mean, Masto, I mean, she's what has she done? That what exciting. And I don't know if you realize this. Oh, good. I like this. Okay, this is good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to have that? We would immediately up the ante on the program here.
There you go. Get a member of Congress in here.
But it was interesting. I did not realize this because I don't look at every single redistricting thing. But Nevada can. I mean, the Democrats control the redistricting process in Nevada, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrat Party, they're unhappy with what the Democrats in Nevada did on redistricting, because it is possible that the Democrats will see that the Republicans, will lose seats in Congress. You might actually have 3 Republicans from Congress getting elected in Nevada if things go right.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they redistricted and made the districts more competitive.
Yeah, that's right.
So it even got the DNC and everybody all upset about this, and kind of interesting. This is something that I didn't expect to see, but that would be huge, because if you could do that, it would you can get some kind of rightward shift. That could be very good for Republicans overall in Nevada to try to regain control of that state overall.
Right, but it's basically it's a strong union movement there, right? The entertainment industry people, but it's basically a conservative state. It's basically a leave me alone state. So,
well, I mean, look, they're facing the same thing everybody else does, right? High gas prices, inflation. Comes down to pocketbook. Democrats, what have you done for me lately? Nothing. Not a zip.
And you got to remember the extent to which they depend on tourism in Nevada. Right. Tourism is an extra expense. It's something you do when you have money left over, right? So if people are spending all their money on basic necessities because of high inflation, gas prices. They don't go gamble in Vegas. They don't go ski in Reno. So, it's really a key thing to Nevada to keep the national economy healthy.
Yeah, look, you've got a fair amount of people obviously fly into Vegas to gamble and go attend conferences and whatever, but a lot of people drive. I mean, they've got all those bordering states. People flock in to go to Las Vegas. It can be gambling. It can be to take in a show. All kinds of stuff. Nevada is, the tourism between the convention business, which is revived and, trying to rebuild. They require people to do a mix of things. And, if things cost a lot more, whether or not it's the price at the pump or whether or not it's just the basic necessities, people start to kind of take another look at that and say, I don't know if I can afford to make the 2 hour trip, by car to Vegas anymore.
Right.
And that has a ripple effect in Nevada. So they, and particularly in Vegas. So they better watch out what's going on over there. I will say this one final comment before we kind of move on here, which is I think this is probably the effective end of Dean Heller's political career. I think he tried again, he's failed again.
Yeah.
I don't see where he goes from here. He's just,
Yeah.
I think he's done, in
Yeah.
Nevada. So it's time for it's time for all the new blood.
Yeah.
To
I don't
move in.
think that he was ever he was a guy who could win in a wave, but not otherwise.
Right, exactly. One last thing as we kind of get down towards the end here, which is just the January 6th commission. They had the primetime hearings, which began, I think, the night of the last show we had. They went on.
They were Thursday, and we were Wednesday. Right?
Okay, they started Thursday, so they started. They had their they did the primetime thing. They've now got some daytime things going on. I haven't watched any of it, but obviously the media coverage is they've fallen all over themselves to talk about what has been revealed, and all the new discoveries and all these kinds of things that have been going on over there. But look, in the long run, I don't see this moving the needle in November. The Democrats are looking at Watergate, thinking about the effect that Watergate had on the elections. This isn't Watergate. This is not going to have the same. This is not going to affect, who really cares about this except for the base of Democrats.
So the first hearing, they basically cleared Trump of what they were trying to imply he did, right? Where they set up the timeline, and the timeline is such that the people who attacked the Capitol, the Proud Boys or whatever made up name they have for him today, left to do this before Trump started speaking. So there was nothing about Trump's speech that inspired them to do this, right? They didn't get any kind of signal from the dais to go wreck the Capitol or anything like that, right? They went on their own, right? And they did whatever they did. And if you beat up a cop or you destroy property or whatever, you shouldn't, that's bad. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. And, if you're charged with that, you should pay whatever the price is. It's curious how the price is about tripled or quadrupled or quintupled or whatever for the people in this protest as opposed to, your regular Saturday night in Portland or whatever. That's a topic for another day. Secondly, it doesn't appear that, I guess the chairman has said there will be no criminal charges. I think because he realized that there's really, saying you lost the election is not a crime, right? That what they're trying to criminalize is that Trump thinks he lost the election. And that's not against the law. It's not against the law to say even today that he thinks he lost the election, or for you or me or anyone else to say that, right? That's what they keep trying to criminalize. No one should be able to run for Congress again if they said the election was fraudulent. That's nonsense, right? You get to say what you want, right? You can't go take a gun and force people to do it, but you can say whatever you want. That's what the First Amendment is all about. So, and I think that, they're realizing, the reason that it's bumped out of prime time and so forth is, they realize that it's not really having a lot of impact. I was trying to check here. There's no new daily presidential track yet up on the websites. But up to today, at least, Biden's approval rating had gone down every single day since the hearing started. So, it's not having the effect they want. And I think there's an argument that, you're consumed with things people don't really care about while there's, $5 gas and 9% inflation and whatnot. We would rather you work on the actual problems. Right. And, finally, I don't think that there's, there's a smoking gun here. I don't think there's, anything they're really getting at. Oh, the people supported this. Okay. They supported it. Right. But, that's all they got. So I think that, it's another Democrat, hoax. Yeah, they tried to perpetrate and put on a big production. They think the production is the thing. I think one of the most interesting things about it is the, absolute political suicide Liz Cheney has committed over this, which shows, the Cheneys were never as smart as we thought they were.
Yeah, well, she went from a darling to something else. So
Yeah,
the
she's
and
done. She's 40 points behind in her primary.
the thing too is that I was just listening to something, and it was, I think it's an NP, I think I guess it was NPR reporter talking about this whole thing, and she says this bipartisan effort, and I'm like, bipartisan effort, my what? I mean, it's like
Yeah,
it's a charade. I mean,
yeah.
we have
Kinzinger and Cheney don't count.
Governor
They
McCarthy tried
turn
to get
down the people. Here's the thing about it. Thought experiment on that. Okay, what if Pelosi had allowed the people on the committee that we wanted? Right? They
right.
wanted Jim Jordan, and there were two or three others. Oh no, we can't have them. We have to have these two lapdogs. Okay, so you can say bipartisan, but we all know better. And you don't have any credibility. Imagine if
Jordan.
Jordan gets on there, right? If you have findings, he's either got to acknowledge them or spin them, right? So you put him in a real box. But oh no, we can't have that. Okay. You also could have gotten through some other things like, who really said we don't need any security, right? Because that seems to be, the left all thinks it was Trump, the right all thinks it was Pelosi, right? Who did call off the dogs, right? Were there cops letting people in? What about that 1,400 hours of video they won't show anybody, right? What's on that video? Who is Ray Epps, right? We would have gotten answers to those questions. Okay. The other thing is they keep saying, they devoted a huge chunk of this hearing to establishing that people told Trump he lost. Hey, his daughter said it. Bill Barr said it. Why didn't he just quit right when Bill Barr said it? Okay. No one has gone and asked Bill Barr how he knows it was not fraudulent, right? Because Bill Barr just said, in about 2 days, I don't see any evidence here. Did you look? What'd you look at? How do you know? Who did you ask? What procedures did you go through to determine there was nothing to Trump's case? Now, I understand, it's probably not the best idea that the FBI, the Justice Department under a Trump appointee is leading the charge to, lawfully overturn an election, right? That does look thuggish, right? But to come out and say there's no fraud here when you haven't lifted a finger to determine if there's fraud here, and then you tell Ivanka, and Ivanka said, so if Ivanka knew and Barr knew, then Trump knew. Okay, well, no, Trump probably asked that question. He probably said, how do you know? And Barr didn't have an answer. So he didn't worry about what Barr said anymore, right? So no, in the Washington Post, the only person I've been scouring for, like, how did Barr determine there was no corruption? And the Washington Post said the only thing it said about it was that he determined this quickly. Like, quickly determined there was no. Okay, so how did he do it? We don't know, and we won't know because they're not going to tell us.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just like I just think I would think that the Democrats would their best strategy is to put all this nonsense behind them, because I think it only makes them look worse in the end.
It's a fundraising exercise. I mean, they're
yeah.
You I'm sure you get all the emails that I get, DLCC, D-Trip. They're all like, hey, we got to get these guys. This is our big chance. And to disqualify Trump, because they know if Trump ran against Biden today, Trump would crush him.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing about these primaries and everything like this, is that the media is very, they're really obsessed. The Democrats are obsessed about what kind of influence Trump has on these candidates and the elections and things like that, and what will that look like? And they're looking for any weakness so they can play that up and use that. Trump, I mean, here's a guy who's been out of office for about a year and a half, and he's still kind of their boogeyman. He's still the guy that they want to go after and create this thing. But I think a lot of it is fundraising. It's also their candidates have got nothing else to run on. Their cupboard is bare in terms of their ideas. Just it's a bad situation for them, and they're trying to. There's a point in time to me that where you can't use Trump as the bad guy or whatever. I mean, it just isn't going to, the voters are just saying, like, I'm over that. We're done.
Yeah, that's the thing that's happening out of this is no one cares. No one, so what? You're not really gonna, they know the Democrats are not really gonna Well, I think they're a way to deflect for the problems of the economy, but they're a fundraising mechanism first and foremost, and they're trying to disqualify Trump from running in 2024.
Well, I think to Charleston's point, though, too. I mean, I think it's partially that, but to me, the January, anything on January 6th is a way to try to change the narrative because of the economy, because of high gas prices. Those are bad headlines for them. Better headlines for them are going after Trump and all his associates and all those people. That to them is like, they would rather have that on the front page of the newspaper or on the website than any harping about the economy and gas prices. Anything, I think, for them, almost anything that pushes those problematic issues off the front page and does no longer takes them front and center is better for them. And that same thing happens. The gun debate, all of these things. These things are much better for them than dealing with the problems they have no idea how to fix and are going to kill them in November.
That's right.
All right, we're out of time. So last word.
Last words. Literally by Felicia Sonmez. That was good. Washington Post fired the reporter who, kept telling them that they weren't quite politically correct enough in punishing the people she directed them to punish. Two sports things real quick. If I'm Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator for the Commanders, I tell them to stick that fine where the sun don't shine. Right? That's viewpoint discrimination. And I'm not paying it. And you can do whatever you want, but you're not getting $100,000 out of me because you don't agree with my opinion. And don't pretend it's something else because that's what your coach said when he handed it out. Final thing is U.S. Open this week in golf. Golf's U.S. Open this week up in Boston, in the Boston area. It's an interesting situation there because some of these players have joined this LIV tour, which is funded by the Saudi royal family. And it's just big bucks, guaranteed payout events and so forth. It's roiling the golf world. And now the people who, betrayed the PGA and went and joined this thing, are in the locker room with the people who stayed behind. And it ought to be the course may not be the most interesting part of the stuff on the course may not be the most interesting part of the story from Boston this week.
Yeah. On Jack Del Rio, the thing is that, he's entitled to his own personal opinion, I think. Calling it a dust up, I know, maybe not the best use of the words or whatever, but still, it's his opinion, right? And they force him into this politically correct type of thing. And yet, if you espouse a left-wing social justice, whatever, you're fine. You're like, oh well,
right.
We have to do this.
Nothing controversial, divisive about that, right?
Yeah,
just hey, you're fine. But this, $100,000 fine for being divisive, like screw you, man. I'm not paying that. Yeah, they have to.
Yeah,
they certainly do.
So as I understand it, with the PGA Tour, I mean, they don't control like the majors, right? Who can play there. Their events, they can banish these 17 guys and whatever. I mean, Dustin Johnson's already said he's going to resign and stuff like that. I mean, they haven't taken like the top 10 or 15 players into live. But look, I mean, if you're a guy who's maybe getting towards the tail end of your career, the Saudis are throwing a lot of money at you.
Guaranteed payout. You get cut. You shoot 78, you still get paid, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen on PGA Tour, right? You got to play good golf every day there. So I see why guys do it. But I mean, it's free enterprise. I don't think this those people are banished for life and they betrayed us. That's the talk that has to be tamped down. Some accommodations got to be made here because the PGA Tour is about to find out that they need these people more than it needs them.
Yeah, I mean, for what's the guy's name? Monahan, Jay Monahan. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think maybe the better thing to do was just to take the high road and say, well, we welcome the Live Tour to the world of golf. Go for it, and let's see which tour is better? Who
Yeah,
puts on who puts on a better golf tournament? Maybe
right.
it's things that the PGA Tour needs to tweak and improve, and maybe that forces their hand. But yeah, but to outright, it's this kind of knee-jerk childish reaction. Okay, you're joining them, you're suspended.
Right. You remember, so I think the parallels to me are the USFL, right? When the USFLs first started, they went out and signed, Brian Sipe and Herschel Walker and all these guys, and they had big time players on their teams. It wasn't necessarily a big time league because the depth was not there.
Right.
Okay. They spent a ton of money. They had Donald Trump owning a team, right? And then, it's like, okay, if it's not fully as deep and competitive as the NFL, it'll only ever get so much of our attention as sports fans, right? So, it becomes what all these things are, which is a sort of a second league. And as a second league, you can't afford to pay Herschel Walker all that money, right? So I think right now, you had a bunch of guys in this event last week in London who shot 78, 79, and they got paid $125,000 for playing, not very good golf. It's like that's okay temporarily, but that can't last either. So, this will get reckoned. This will get dealt with by the market, if people don't get too hyped about condemning it.
Right. I mean, realizing that, the side of the royal family's got a ton of money, but even at some point in time, I mean, they're going to have to look, they'll look at this and say, as a business enterprise, it doesn't fly.
Doesn't work. Right.
Right. Yeah. You've got,
it do what we thought it would do, and it may and it may not. And,
it's one thing to have mediocre golf played by some of these guys but part of this thing is also the PR, the fans. You want to show that they've got fans coming out, and fans are not going to pay money to go to a golf tournament to watch guys shoot 78s, on a regular basis. It's just not going to happen. Okay, we got another comment here. So this show's going into overtime here.
Right.
Right. I mean, actually, that's very true. Right. Yeah. So there's ways to do that. I mean, they can work in hand, but it just seems like the PGA just had this knee-jerk reaction. So the Saudis have got a lot of money. It doesn't mean they're going to just they'll fund it forever. So it has to stand on its own merits. Like you said, the USFL, good example. The USFL is back. Will it stand again? Who knows?
Right, but it's back in a wholly different form. It's a minor league now. It's definitely
it's a different format, right?
Yeah.
And when you brought up the name Brian Sipe, I don't even know the last time I heard the name Brian Sipe.
Yeah, they had some good players. They had Memphis had Kick, Zonka, Danny White, Paul Warfield. Yeah, those were Super Bowl players, right?
Right. Yeah, no, they did lure them away. So anyway, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your comments and today as well. As always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America. We will actually I meant to say at the beginning, we'll be off next week because I've got more. It's my 6-week thing going on there with the church.
Okay, that's good because I'll be traveling.
Okay, so it works out.
I was going to have to do some crazy stuff in a hotel room like I've done before, but yeah, that's good. That's a good week to be on.
That was the other thing. So I'm going to keep talking then. So are you going to go ahead, even with high gas prices, you're going to do your road trip?
Well, I got to go to South Carolina for basketball. That's
okay.
There's no choice in that. What happens beyond there probably will be limited by the gas.
All right. And then for you, Brian, and for everybody else out there, happy Father's Day. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. All right. We'll see you then, everybody. Thanks.